Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. This is 8 Zerdo. I'm going to talk about a sort of geographic political phenomenon, and it is the secession movement of certain geographical regions within state, a state or states plural within the United States of America. So, for example, close in the Pacific Northwest, has been the movement for quite a while, over 100 years, of the state of Jefferson, which would encompass part of Northern California and part of southwestern Oregon, as you can see here. That has unfortunately not been able to gain much traction in the legislature, probably because it's a bi-state movement. However, even if that part of Northern California could secede, because they should, although economically they would have a hard time. However, with the way that California is going with the present governor, I don't even want to say his name because I don't want to give him credit for anything, even negative credit, because anyway, the guy is just a complete communist and he's clueless. So, and here's another example, even getting more traction, a lot more traction politically and legislatively, and also by the actual people who live in these particular counties in eastern Oregon, is the Greater Idaho movement, which would pull a good portion of eastern and southern Oregon. It looks like even they're looking at Northern California, so that would sort of solve part of the state of Jefferson situation and incorporate them into one large state called Greater Idaho. Because again, in eastern Oregon and southern Oregon, southwestern Oregon, and northern California, the people, they feel completely unrepresented by the liberal communist interests of their respective legislators and governing officials in western Oregon, western Washington. Actually, the Greater Idaho movement also does include part of southeastern Idaho, across the border west from Lewiston. I think it includes Walla Walla, Washington as well. It also should include the Tri-Cities, Richland, Kennewick, and Pasco. But anyway, I digress. So basically, yes. And then moving on to some other states, Illinois has had a movement to secede, especially creating a separate entity for Chicago, which makes sense. And Minnesota as well, especially into 2020-21. A petition was started alongside the blah, blah, blah. Primary goal of counties outside the Twin Cities area joining South Dakota, but also encouraging joining Iowa or Wisconsin. The bill was introduced in response to Governor Tim Walz's Tampon Tim, idiot, communist, insane response to the COVID-19 pandemic, in which Minnesota was shut down and restricted to far stricter extent and for longer duration time than all of its neighboring states. South Dakota, which remains the only state in the country to never issue any business restrictions at any time, was viewed in a major contrast to Minnesota's restrictions. Yeah. Nevada, Clark County would be separate because it's a blue county as far as politically. And so the rest of Nevada would secede from Clark County. That makes sense because Clark County is basically most of it more like Southern California. I should say southwestern California. And then in New York City, the rest of the state would secede from New York City and Long Island. Also, Texas, of course, Republic of Texas has a right to partition itself into as many as 5 states. So, what I see as a really interesting solution now, I don't think our Constitution, the United States, has a provision for this. However, maybe an amendment could be applied, actually enacted. So in Italy, there are 5 regions which have home rule. and they have some legislative, administrative, and financial power to a varying extent, depending on their specific statute. These regions became autonomous in order to take into account cultural differences and protect linguistic minorities. So I would say with these areas in the United States, let's say Greater Idaho and Northern California, the state of Jefferson, we're talking about definitely cultural issues as far as cultural economic situations, because those areas are largely rural. They're based on ranching, farming, and mining to a large extent, whereas the rest of those, the other counties are more urban, and they do have agricultural areas, but it's not the same. I mean, ranching and large-scale farming and mining is a very, very different lifestyle than the urban, suburban, even semi-rural lifestyle. So just show you the map of these particular regions in Italy that are autonomous. So I think that's would be a great solution in the United States, is grant these areas autonomy, not to completely secede from the Union, but to have autonomous status. Over and out. Peace.